Hey everybody, Tony here with an album review of Verdi's Rigoletto with conductor Konstantin Orbelian along with the Kaunas City Symphony Orchestra and the men of the Kaunas State Choir, which was recorded from July 1 to 9, 2016 at the Kaunas Philharmonic, yet was released by Delos on November 10, 2017. This was Dmitri Hvorostovsky's final studio recording as he unfortunately lost the battle against brain cancer on November 22, 2017. And he fought this battle for a good 2.5 years. So, Maestro Hvorostovsky, may you rest in peace. May your legacy live on throughout the ages. And I want to thank you so much for your talent, dedication, charisma, and your overall passion as a fine singing actor. With that said, let's get on to the singers, starting off with, of course, Dmitri Hvorostovsky, who sang the titular role of Rigoletto. For those of you not in the know who Dmitri Hvorostovsky was, he started out as a cavalier baritone with roles like Conte Almaviva from Mozart's Le Notte di Figaro and Ieletsky from The Queen of Spades, and even that of Eugene Onegin from, of course, Eugene Onegin. Throughout his career, he mainly specialized in all of these cavalier baritone roles. Then much later, he sang the slightly more dramatic baritone roles like Posa from Don Carlo, Rigoletto, Giorgio Giormo, among others. Yet his major forte was always the cavalier baritone roles, all thanks to his tall and dashing stage presence and of course his equally dashing good looks, which made him very ideal for all of these noblemen. He at times sang the fatherly roles of Rigoletto and Giorgio Giormo, but more than anything, his forte was always these dashing and noble cavalier baritone roles. And when he recorded this particular role of Rigoletto, I was practically in awe of everything he had to offer. It should be no surprise that I admire Hvorostovsky's talents as a singing actor, and he was able to prove his overall charisma, his energy, and everything that he had to offer so well. And he has been singing the role of Rigoletto for quite some time, most notably at the Royal Opera House in London and even in New York's Metropolitan Opera House. And what he had to offer as Rigoletto was absolutely stunning. He was absolutely charismatic in his portrayal. He was able to give him a lot of cynicism in the first act, yet give him a fine amount of pain in the next few acts. And he was able to characterize him so well with his voice. Yes, he may not be a true Verdi baritone, but the overall charisma and the overall dedication and the diligence that Dmitri Hvorostovsky had to offer through Rigoletto was absolutely in evidence. The way he was able to sing certain phrases with such mellifluousness, and the way he was able to sing certain phrases with such abandon was just so awesome to witness. And this was definitely some fine singing that he was able to do with Rigoletto, and he was able to do a fabulous job from beginning to end, and he managed to really sell it in this role. He was quite convincing as Rigoletto that I was able to be invested in his overall vocal performance. Then we have the Duca di Mantova, or the Duke of Mantua, sung by Francesco de Mura. I first heard this tenor live as Alfredo Jamal from La Traviata at the Royal Opera House. Back then, he was quite good, as he didn't really stand out of all the other cast members, but he managed to hold himself up quite well in this recording. He was able to grow as a singing actor, and the way he was able to use his lyric tenor voice was absolutely fabulous. This was a tenor with a fine and wide range, as he was able to hit the high D after singing Possente Amor Mi Chiama, and he sounded young, fresh, and absolutely dashing. It should be no surprise that Francesco de Muro has been singing a fair amount of high-flying, high-singing tenor roles like Arturo from I Puritani, Fenton from Falstaff, among many other roles suited for this fine Italian tenor. And he was able to have a fine technique from beginning to end. And as I stated before, he grew so well. He was able to be in his element as the Duke with that dashing and fine lyric tenor voice and that youthful presence that he had to offer, which is so full of exuberance, charm, and a fair amount of masculinity. And I give him a lot of kudos for everything he had to offer as the Duke. Singing Gilda was Nadine Sierra, who was fabulous in this role. I heard her sing Gilda 4 months ago when she sang this at Hannover's Marschbach, and I thought she did fabulously in that role, but here I thought she was equally as heavenly. As I stated before, she is not the Tweety Bird sopranos that a lot of people are accustomed to when it comes to singing Gilda. She is a growing lyric soprano who is able to sing all of her coloratura quite well, and her high E flat in Si Vendetta was really spot on. And she was able to be a fine singing actress in this role. She was able to sing everything so well, and she was just natural. She had no gimmicks. She was not a super high singing soprano. Yes, I would have loved to see her sing the high E after Caro Nome, but I digress. She still managed to do a very fine job as Gilda, making her young, girlish, loving, and caring, but at the same time, she was able to make Gilda sound like a fresh young woman who is quite curious of the world around her, yet at the same time seems to have a fair amount of self-awareness. And she was, as always, a dedicated singer who went from strength to strength and who always improved on her craft. And she managed to have a great amount of dedication in everything she did. Sparafucile was sung by Andrea Mastronni, and he was wonderfully masculine in this role. This fine basso cantante managed to give the goods as Sparafucile. He was able to make him threatening, demonic, but at the same time an overall enigma. He was able to bring that ambiguity that made his character fascinating, and he managed to have a towering vocal presence which made him all the more alluring. And his basso cantante voice was just heavenly to listen to. This is a fine young basso cantante with a brilliant future ahead of him, and I cannot wait to see him in a lot more roles. Then we have Madalena, who is sung by Oksana Volkova, whose fine lyric dramatic mezzo voice was absolutely stunning. This mezzo-soprano managed to use the tone and the color of her voice so well. It may not have that overall incision reminiscent of Ebe Stignani, Giulietta Simonato, Kerstin Thorborg, Georgina von Milinkovic, or even that of Margareta Klose, but I have to give Oksana Volkova loads of credit for everything she did as a singing actress. She was able to make Maddalena quite sultry, seductive, and very alluring through the usage of her voice, and she was able to make her quite the charmer. She was able to also make her quite young and fresh and lively, and at the same time quite sultry and seductive. I cannot wait to hear a lot more of Oksana Volkova, as she is a fine and growing lyric dramatic mezzo with a brilliant future ahead of her. Kostas Smoriginas was a virile, handsome, and absolutely noble Conte Monterone, with his round Helden baritone voice, that towering presence that his voice has as he was able to sing quite powerfully, and the way he was able to command so much from the orchestra. He was able to make this role come alive. He was dedicated as a singing actor that I have to give him loads of kudos for everything he had to offer in terms of singing Il Conte Monterone. Then we have a fine young mezzo-soprano by the name of Egle Szilauskaite, who sang the roles of Giovanna, La Contessa Ceprano, and the page boy. And she was an equally fine singing actress who was able to use 3 different voices for 3 different characters, thus proving herself to be a versatile singing actress and a brilliant mezzo with an equally brilliant future. With Giovanna, she was able to make her mature sounding, though I would have loved to have a slightly more contralto-y voice singing this role, but I completely digress. She was able to make Giovanna loving, caring, and rather matronly, if you ask me. Though it's safe to say that the youthfulness and freshness of her voice were in absolute evidence. And with La Contessa Ceprano, she was able to make her feminine, gorgeous, and rather lovely with that medium-toned voice. And with the page boy, she was able to make him young, light-sounding, and rather high-pitched. She was able to do a fine job with all these 3 characters that I cannot wait to hear a lot more of her in the near future, and I cannot wait to see her career grow and grow. We also had such amazing singing from Andrius Apshega's dashing and masculine Marullo, Tadas Girininkas, equally dashing and virile Conte Ceprano, Thomas Pavillones' characterful Borsa, and Liudas Mikauskas' virile court usher. So overall, the singing was absolutely phenomenal. Not only from the likes of Dmitri Hvorostovsky, Nadine Sierra, Francesco De Muro, Andrea Mastroni, and Oksana Volkova, but all of the other supporting players. This was definitely a unified effort from everyone, and they managed to contribute handsomely. And the conducting done by Constantin Orbelian was rather solid. He did a fine job leading the orchestra and the chorus, and even though I thought his conducting skills were fine with some great moments here and there were some moments that I was not really a particular fan of, like the storm scene, which could have used a little bit more excitement and a lot more fire and a lot more thrills and chills. But here it sounded a little bit sedate and withdrawn, which shouldn't really be the case. And that's kind of my main issue with Constantin Orbelian as a conductor. He's a little bit on the sedate side, and he's a little bit on the withdrawn side when there are some passages he could have used a little bit more muscle in. But despite all that, I still have to give him a fair amount of credit for not only leading the orchestra and chorus, but also the singers who made this album. So overall, if you are a fan of Dmitri Hvorostovsky, then I definitely have to say that his last hurrah in the recording studio, Rigoletto, is an absolute must listen. And with that said, I give this studio recorded version of Verdi's Rigoletto a well-deserved rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars. Even though there were some elements like the sedate conducting by Constantin Orbelian, which just didn't really grab me, the positives more than outweigh the negatives. He still managed to lead the orchestra and chorus very well, and it also helped that there was a great amount of star quality headed by not only Hvorostovsky, but also by Sierra, Mastroni, De Muro, and Volkova, and everyone else who participated. There was so much star quality in this particular studio version of Rigoletto that everyone deserved the highest amount of kudos, and I really have to say that this was definitely a fine send-off for the great Dmitri Hvorostovsky, whose charisma, whose charm, and whose dedication as a singing actor will always be remembered. And for those of you who listened to this particular studio version of Verdi's Rigoletto, starring Dmitri Hvorostovsky, Nadine Sierra, and Francesco De Muro, what did you think of it? Did you feel like Dmitri Hvorostovsky really sold it in this role? Did you feel like there was another singer who stole his thunder? Or did you feel like there was something that just didn't really hold up? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in much later for my review of Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, which will be shown at the Berlin Oranje. So until then, good night, everybody.